Now, this is an odd one. Since 2015, there have been hundreds of instances of cats and other creatures being killed and then cut up. Usually the head and the tail is removed and left on display. And the vast majority of this has taken place in southeast England around the town of Croydon. The police did investigate, but they have concluded that the Croydon cat killer is probably a fox. But others aren't convinced. South Norwood Animal Rescue and Liberation, or SNARL, continues to investigate. And on the line is co-founder Boudicca Rising. Boudicca, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, for people who wouldn't be familiar with this case, can you tell us what's been going on since 2015?
Well, since 2015, we've had reports of cats being beheaded and their tails removed, and sometimes their head and paws removed. It started out in what appeared to start out in Croydon, in the little suburb called Boudicca. In September, October 2015, there was kind of a rash of incidents there. Because we're animal rescue and we home in the area, we kind of had a look at it and did some digging and discovered that these incidents actually were occurring. But we thought it was a very local, small issue. We didn't realise that actually it was happening across the southeast, and it was happening across the southeast at that time. We just weren't getting reports in because these incidents were being reported to the police, who weren't investigating because there was nothing to investigate, and they were just closing them at source. So we started investigating fairly early on. We discovered that these incidents weren't just happening in Croydon, they were happening in Surrey. We had an incident happen in East London, and we started to piece together what we thought was going on. We went to the police, we had a chat to them, we started working with a wildlife officer who had cases of his own come in, and in December 2015, January 2016, what was called Operation Tucker Hay was started by the Metropolitan Police. The RSPCA came on board in March, and we continued to work with the other two organisations on the case. Subsequent to that, it's been a long old haul. We agreed that we had what appeared to be a serial mutilator of cats, but also we were finding the same injuries on foxes and rabbits. And just lately, the recent development is that the Metropolitan Police closed the case. They believe it to be the work of foxes scavenging road traffic accident victims after death.
Yeah.
We don't agree with that because in the course of our investigation, we've noted some behavioural aspects of the case that couldn't possibly be foxes. And so we are basically now putting a team together to take the investigation forward without the police. That's the short story.
Right, okay. Well, there's a lot there. It's now this came to me known as the Croydon cat killer. I think you mentioned there are other animals. Have other animals been mutilated in this way?
Yeah, we've got the same injuries on foxes and we've got the same injuries on rabbits. There are a couple of things that we picked up as signature injuries early on. A couple of them have now unfortunately been released because owners have gone, hang on, police told us this is a signature injury, not to tell anyone. If it was foxes, then it couldn't be a signature injury. And if it is a signature injury, it couldn't be foxes. So there's a few bits that have been made public that we would have, I think, enhanced up for it not to be made public because it's an active investigation as far as we're concerned. But those same injuries are present on the rabbits, foxes and the cats. Yeah,
now they're dismembered and in some at least some cases, pieces of the animal are arranged in a triangle, is that correct?
Yeah, we've had a couple arranged in a triangle. We've had heads and tails on car bonnets, on park benches, and we've also had collar returns and body part returns. In Watford, we had a lady whose bunny rabbit was decapitated, and 6 months later the head was placed back in her garden and the head was perfect. It wasn't decomposed, it was like it had just happened. It was placed in the centre of the garden. So unless foxes have refrigerators or freezers, I don't think that's foxes. We had another incident in a place called West Wickham where a collar was returned 6 months later, and it was the cat's collar. It wasn't a sort of a random collar, and it was placed a few doors down from the owner's home. And we've had a terrible incident in St Leonard's that actually has made the press. If anyone wants to look at it, basically the lady's rabbit was killed. We went down there. We were working closely with the police at the time. We went down there. They called us and said, do you think it's the same guy? We had a look. We said, yep. And the rabbit's liver was placed in a stone at the bottom of the garden. The rabbit's body was at the top of the garden. because we noticed some things about the garden we wanted police to take a second look at, we withdrew. We left. We came back to London, and in the morning I got a call from her to say that the killer apparently returned. He kicked her cat flap in. All her cats were out. 3 were missing, and where the rabbit's liver had been left, she put a big ceramic plant pot over it, and that had been removed. The liver removed. The rabbit's collar, which up until that point had been missing, placed where the liver was, and the ceramic pot put back on top. Again, I find it very difficult to believe foxes can kick cat flaps open.
And the person, Stephen Harris, who's a science professor, he's the person who posited this idea it was a fox. Did he actually examine any or many of these cases?
Apparently, in his words, he examined a bag of cats for 10 minutes 10 years ago. He's not a pathologist. He's a behaviourist. He wasn't able to provide anybody with any evidence, paperwork, records, or anything. So actually, in terms of the Met Police's decision, they viewed his opinion as an opinion only because it wasn't evidence-based.
Mm. How many cases then have you examined, or your organisation examined?
500 over the last 3 years.
Crikey.
Yeah. We rule a lot out. I mean, there's not a killing every day. Sometimes all we go to is road traffic accidents, which can be very freaky. Predation can look very odd as well. Not all mutilated cats are the result of human intervention. Road traffic accidents in particular can be produce the most horrendous, alarming injuries, but they're quite different to what we're seeing, and predation is quite different to what we're seeing.
But given that they're clustering in one particular area, that's extremely suspicious, and many of the things you've described are extremely suspicious. Has there been any cases where there may have been CCTV footage or anything of that nature? No, I mean, this is one of the frustrating things. We know that he's forensically aware. We know that he's CCTV aware. We also, the problem is there isn't that much CCTV in residential areas, and it's not in people's gardens. They've got CCTV pointing at the car. They haven't got a CCTV pointing at the road outside. We have linked up, however, with a group of people called Super Recognisers International to review the CCTV we do have to see if we can spot anything, particularly people. They're really, really good at kind of recognising faces. They're trained to do that. So we've linked up with them to explore that option. Initially, though, when the Met was still investigating this, did they have any theories as to who this person might be or why they were doing this? Yeah, it's very hard to kind of say why someone would do this. My view, and it is only a view, is that this is more to do with his relationship with humans than it is to do with the animals. I think the animals are incidental victims. Mm. He seems to, when people display bodies, they want a reaction. And that's what he's going for, so the human reaction, rather than, killing for the sake of killing. I think the killing's incidental. Yeah, though, one would worry that this person might graduate onto human beings, notwithstanding the horrific things that he or she is doing to animals. Is it true that you did compile a list of suspects? Yeah, we've had a number. I think 37 names. I think it was around 50, but the police confirmed it was 37 names who passed them over the course of the investigation. We've still got an active suspect list. We've just ruled somebody out. So we had 9, we've now got 8 people we're still looking at for various reasons. And we do get names in every now and again. And as far as the Met is concerned, is that it? It's all over? They're not going to do anything else about it? They've said to us that if we come up with any evidence to prove it's a human, they will look at reopening the case. However, at this point, they're closed. So we're basically on our own, which is why we're doing various things at the moment. We've linked up with the Super Recognisers, a guy called Mick Neville, who's ex-Met, who developed this team for the Met. We are looking at, we're chatting to a geographical profiler at the moment, and we kind of, what we propose is put in place the skill set we lose by the police coming out of the equation. Right, but what's in terms of the areas it's taking place? Is there a pattern where there were a lot of incidents in one part and then it moved, to another part?
No, they appear to be journeys. So what we've noticed over the last 3 years is around bank holiday weekends, he's more likely to hit the Sussex coast. So we don't have anything up here in London, but we'll get one in Brighton or Hove. Or sometimes Portsmouth, sometimes the Hampshire coast. So it's a pattern. We also have areas where if it was foxes, they're really weird because it's just not happening at all. So in some areas, we've not had a case in Shropshire, for instance. We've not had a case in Scotland. We've not had a case in a number of various areas, but we have had cases in Manchester and Birmingham. In Birmingham, we've had 3 cases, all in the same suburb, but nowhere else in Birmingham. So if it is foxes, they're bloody clever foxes, I tell you.
They're taking the train around the place. Boudicca Rising is co-founder of South Norwood Animal Rescue and Liberation. Boudicca, thank you very much for talking to us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for calling us. Take care.
We're going to take a break after that. Queuing up. As we were talking to Boudicca Rising about the Croydon cat killer, and that really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? This is disgraceful, says one texter, that the police closed the case and cats are still being killed like this. How can you look at the triangle formations and think it's other animals? Someone else says, foxes are very clever. I wouldn't be that quick to discount the police on this one. Yeah, though, I mean, some of the stories she told, you kind of go, would a fox do that? And, putting flower pots over something and then it being removed and then something else being put underneath it. Now, it could be, of course, that a lot of them are foxes, but then someone's copying this to kind of... it could be a copycat situation. Now, Ruth says foxes know how to get into our compost and our bins. Everything has a lid and the bins are in the bin store. I've seen them open the door, jump in the bins, close the door again. They really have evolved and are very cunning. Dave in Cork says the reason they don't believe the police is that they don't get funding unless they can ham up the situation and get people to sponsor them and their charities, says Dave. Well, it was Boudicca and her husband that started this. Now, they've kind of linked up with other charities. So I don't know if they're getting really much in this seems to be a kind of a 2-person band at the moment. I hope they show the police that you shouldn't assume the killing of animals is simply natural selection, and will continue to gather evidence. Someone else points out correctly, how does she know it's a man? She keeps saying he. You're right. She was just being sexist there in her cat killers. I'm sure there've been female cat killers. If anybody knows the names of any female cat killers, or indeed male cat killers, do text them in. Michael says, Boudicca Rising, is that her name? Well, yes. As in the Irish goddess with the flowing red hair. Surely she has assumed that name and wasn't given it at birth. I don't know. I should have asked her that question. I'm blaming the Russians, says Putin is definitely behind this. It's something he would do. It is, actually. He'd just do that for fun. Those 2 lads, he just sent them down there beforehand. Kill a few cats on the way there, just to mix it up a bit.